Hi, it's Anne. Thanks for stopping by. I'm wanting to make some progress on my book lovers journal today. I've really just barely started it, and I thought we might make some pockets. This is something I actually haven't even put the signature into it yet. I've gutted a Reader's Digest book, and this is one the Reader's Digest, those condensed novel books. This is one I feel good about just leaving completely as it is. The cover is attractive. I think just by the time I put a closure on it, that's going to give enough decoration to the front. And it's going to be kind of a big journal in terms of number of pages, but I wanted room for lots of writing. So I have 3 signatures, largely of blank paper in here, but I'm going to have room to put quite a few pockets and belly bands and other things here. I put some of our library pockets in there. I thought that would be kind of nice to put some of these library cards in. I have some of our little more unusual library pockets, these that can go throughout. So I'm going to be stuffing it pretty soon, but I wanted to make a couple of other specialty pockets. So let's do that today before I actually begin putting this together. For some reason, I was thinking that most journals I do, I stitch that I create, I stitch the signatures right into the spine so that the threads are visible from the outside. But I decided just to do this, stitch these onto a piece of chipboard, and then I'm going to glue it in. So we'll see how that works. I've actually made mini journals in this style. That was the first style of journal for hardback that I started doing, but anyway, then I got into stitching directly into the spine. I think this will be fine, but I think I am going to be doing some decorating before I get it attached into the actual cover. So let's set this aside, and my thought is to make a few pockets that have little snippets of paper that look like they're books on a bookshelf. There's nothing that unusual about it. A little glob of glue here. And nothing particularly unusual about it, but it's a really fun technique to try. So I thought I'd make a pocket or two, and then I can really get started with filling this. So I'm going to use, I have a couple of sheets here in wood tones that will kind of be nice looking like they're a bookshelf. This is just a little piece of cardstock that I've run through my embossing machine to give it just a tiny bit of texture. This is 5 inches wide, so that's going to be a decent width for these pockets. And let me just sort of begin by pulling out a ruler. I'd like to have a little bit of text form the background of this, and then I'll layer my little faux books on there, and we'll probably be spending most of our time selecting words that are going to be as though they are titles for these books. So that's always kind of fun. I've done this several times, but you may not have seen it before. Or even if you have, maybe you won't mind just doing a little craft with me. I have a piece of book page here. This is from an edition of Heidi. So some classic literature there. And I think I'm going to have this go all the way across. So this will be 5 inches wide, and my craft mat helps me make good use of my time, not having to guess. Wait, did I do that? I did that 4 inches across. Oh, Anne, that was silly. Here I said I was making good use of my time, and I'm having to do it again. Anyway, that's all right. There's plenty of ways I can use that 4-inch sheet, but I do want this to be 5. So this little sheet of a page from the Heidi book. I just put a little smearing of gesso over it. I'm more used to doing narrower pieces of book page, so perhaps that's why I did it. Let's be honest, I was busy yakety-yakking and didn't pay attention to my counts. This is 5 inches across. I could have used the other one too, but let's go to the top here. And, you know, there's a million ways you can do this. I'm just doing this frankly because it's easy. It's the end of the weekend. I didn't feel like coming up with something entirely innovative, and I want this to come to sort of form kind of a band that's going to be the backdrop for these books. So let me get that affixed down here. There's a glue stick. I've been doing lots of cleaning in the craft room, which needed very much to be done. Cleaning and organizing. Feel like I've been doing so many projects lately with letter of the week and everything. I've been doing a lot of creating and a lot of tidying up in between creations, but gee, it's fun. I had been a little bit nervous that I wouldn't have time to keep up with letter of the week, but that is really fun. Where is something I can glue on? I think this map that's about to be thrown away because it's not very colorful will be a little good glue surface for me for the moment. All right, now we're going to have our backdrop for our little bookshelf. There we go. And it looks like I could trim that up just a little bit more there. There we go. Okay, now what I have handy for some of the little books that I'm going to be lining up is I just have a lot of scrapbook paper scraps. I mean, these are literally scraps. Some of these are things that I, pulled out of the bin because they were just little strips like this one. But I thought, oh, I can make a book spine out of that. There's several here. Some are two-sided, so that looks, I like this one with the stripiness. And these are all, these are a few little magazine type pages, but I think these are all mostly scrapbook paper. So why don't I continue in that vein? And I don't want anything taller than this, although I guess I could go in there, but I'm going to, mostly they're going to be probably no more than 2.5 inches tall. I want some of them shorter than that. Let me just start with this one. Well, that's 2.5. This is a little, in case anybody asks me what brand this is, there was no brand on this. This was something very inexpensive. I can't remember if I got this online or if I got it at, I probably got it online. There we go. But it's a little no brand, no brand, little chopper. Here's another piece that's textured. Why don't I make that a little bit shorter? And maybe I will make one that's a little bit longer too. We'll see how that looks. Sort of sticking up into that, into the top of that bookshelf area. Now, where are all my books? I'll put those, try to put them in a pile here. And this blue is nice. And here's another. Of course, this is not going to give us really good contrast against that, so I think I will stick to the darker portion. And I learned in going back over some of the other bookshelf types of ephemera, those sorts of designs that I have done, I found one really critical mistake that I made in my previous project. So I'm going to show those to you in a second, and it'll be like, you know, in in those kids magazines where they show you a picture saying, find what's wrong. Because there is something that is really wrong with how I did them. And I bet you're going to be able to figure out what it is. Kind of hate to cut this up, but yet it's foolish to hoard it. So I'm going to cut off this dark green piece because that kind of looks like it would be the color of a book spine. And let me do one more. I'll do this one that's a little more colorful. Wow, that one's really colorful. Actually, why don't I use this very colorful side? And then I'll take one, I'll make a shorter one from this side. This ought to fill this bookshelf. There we go. And I've marked a little pencil mark there from something I must have been cutting earlier. All right, these are all our little books. All of these little strips. And they're really going to just line up here. Well, and that picked up. I'm going to shave this off just a little bit so it's on that white background. There's one that kind of like that one going up like that. I feel like some of these should be a little bit more narrow. These are rather thick tomes. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You know, I'm sure you've seen this motif many times before. But it's fun, you know, it's a fun little look. I actually used this motif years ago to make a tote bag. I wanted a tote bag to carry books to book club, and I made one out of a cute tote bag. It's worn out. It's literally worn out now. But I appliqued a bookshelf on the side of the tote bag. I made the tote bag out of some old curtains, some kind of neutral colored curtains, and took strips of fabric, and for the titles that I put on the little spines, I used the branding strips off of the selvages of fabric and appliqued those on there, and that They were really, really cute. But I've used, I mean, it's been so many years since I made that, the appliques were really, really worn and all coming out. And I finally just had to put that tote bag into permanent retirement. It served me well. Let's call this bookshelf full. Now I'm going to show you what I did wrong on an earlier iteration of this design. And this has been probably well over a year ago that I made this. Here it is. Can you tell what's wrong with this? I'll let you think about that for a second. What is really, really wrong about the design here? I used, for these words, I used branding strips of scrapbook paper, the individually sold scrapbook paper that has that little strip, the large 12-inch, 12-inch square sheets. They very often have interesting typefaces on those branding strips. So I saved, and I didn't have that many left over, which is why I'm going to do something else different for the title here. But I saved a lot of those and layered those up. This is what's wrong. I had these are books on the shelf, and I had the text going, starting at the bottom and going up. This is the only one that's correct from the top down. Actual books, the text starts at the top and goes down. So these would actually only be correct if they were this way, and then this one would be wrong, and I want to use these. I think I might see if I can go pry them off. Oh, it looks like maybe I might be able to do that. I thought this would be something I would do off camera, but I am here confessing of my misdeeds to you. Because once I realized that I had done that incorrectly. Oh, these are coming off better than I thought. Well, good, we can make a second one with this. Or maybe we can just use this same little shelf. I'm distracting myself with correcting this mistake, but I am going to set this aside and then I'll get back to the current project. And we'll do that correctly from the get-go, and then we'll see if we can go back and give this guy a do-over in life. I'll show you. I mean, I literally had to go to other books that I had on my shelf. Okay, this book is right side up. Guide to Wildflowers and Trees. Can you see that? Starts at the top and goes down. So you have to tilt your head to the right to read that. In case you thought that was like the only one that was that way. Starts at the top and goes down. Had books on my shelf my whole life and never really noticed which way they went. So anyway, live and learn, as we say. All right, now back here. Let me shift these off, and I'm going to put a little thumb notch in the top, and then we're going to talk about the different ways that we can add some titles to these books. I want this not very deep. That will work nicely. And while I'm here, I might as well put in some of the rounded edges just to add a little bit of softness there. And then let's decorate the books. I just love how this looks. I miss that tote bag too. That was really good. I could always make myself another one. Let's just pull out some of these little books that we have just prepped. I'm not going to round those corners, and we're just going to choose some titles. I have some old books here. Don't know that this one is going to work, but old pages tend to work pretty nicely. Let me see. This text is a little bit too big. What I'm going to do is to pull it up from pull the text up from the page with some Scotch tape. I think this one is probably not the best. However, I see some text there, Kitty Gatewood, and that's all in caps. And let's see if we can just pretend that there's a novel called Kitty Gatewood. And that can kind of serve as a faux title to our faux book. Just kind of trying to rub that, really get that tape down with my fingernail. And there's that. I think that's going to work okay. The better books to do this kind of lifting are older pages, but also ones that have individual chapter titles or the names of chapters at the top of the page, because then you have really a lot to work with. Yeah, that looks like it's about the same. Oh, it could go a little bit smaller. Maybe, is that going to be visible there? Yes, I think that will be visible there. I'm going to trim off with my scissors the part of the text that is not our new title of Kitty Gatewood. Kitty was the main character of that novel. That was one that I got at the thrift store and read it before I started cutting it up, which is a usual practice of mine. The book is not that great, to be honest, but it was okay. It was about a privileged, pampered young woman that came to the Oregon coast in the long ago days, the Oregon Trail days, but she came on ship rather than on the trail, and learned about life. Kitty did learn about life, but it wasn't so good. It was okay. It was one that was not so good that I wanted to save it. Okay, there's our new book called Kitty Gatewood, and we will make certain when we get it affixed down that we will read from the top down. Let me pull out another. Let's see, is this one? I don't see any. Don't see anything really appropriate here because we don't have that text at the top, so I'm going to set that aside. That's something for another day. This is a really, really old book. This is a children's reader from 1903. Herbert Ruport had this. Oh, Herbert, you certainly wrote a lot on your blank pages. Do we have about Sir Thomas More? Let's see if that is something we could lift off. Something in all caps. It's always nice to save for a book title. Once again, just rubbing, and some books lift better than others. Oh, this one looks like it's going to be okay. Yeah, this book is going to be pretty good for that. Just with the scissors to trim that kind of down to the size. I could just cut out the text all by itself too. I don't have to lift it, but I kind of like the translucence that we tend to get when we lift that text up with the tape, and it is the matte tape and not the shiny tape that I use. There's Sir Thomas More. Great philosopher of his time. Charge at Balaclava. Something during the Crimean War. Shall we pretend that that's a book title? Let's see how that's going to work. Ooh, I barely made that tape long enough. Hope I don't have that tape stuck down so much that I can't grab it. All right. This is probably the 50th time you have seen, if you're a longtime viewer, the 50th time you have seen me lift text out of old books, or I do it a lot with handwriting on the backs of old postcards or something like that. What book should this go on? Shall we put it on this rather colorful one? Will that darkness show up here? I kind of think I like it there, because the notion of the charge at Balaclava, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, that probably is going to be a rather weighty book, so it'll be on this larger volume. There's that one. Let me get something that maybe has a little bit different typeface. What is this? Quaint Old Stories. The Man's Boot. Actually, I just kind of like quaint old stories. How about that? Let's pick that up. And I could do something that was horizontal rather than vertical if I had a thicker volume that I was going to do. Scandal. That's a nice, that would look really, really good. The Wise Men of Gotham. Let me pick that up. I'm sure there were wise women too. Not that they would have been written about back in the early 1900s or whenever this book came to be. Let me see if I can get a date on this one. 1912, yeah. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, let's pull up The Wise Men of Gotham. And yeah, not a whole lot of of difference in the typefaces here. You know, maybe I'll just ink this whole thing. Not ink, and just glue it, put the glue stick on it, and cut it off here. You know, that doesn't really look the best, does it? I kind of like quaint old stories here, and that maybe is something that could fit on this narrower volume. And I'm gluing these, in case you're curious why I'm just using the top of my glue stick. If I have something that's really narrow, I don't really like to put it down on another surface and then glue the whole thing, because I feel like I waste so much glue in that sort of application. And this way I'm only applying glue to the actual surface that I want to glue. All right, let's let's prepare. Let's get this little bookshelf started. If I had like a little cat or something to put the cat on the bookshelf, I think that would be super cute. But my thought is to kind of clump my books together here. This one is going to have to remain tall because that is a really tall title, but this could be a little bit shorter. Got a little room to crop, and then I can tilt one. Is my goal, to have one sort of tilted. Let me just get to gluing. Yeah, I'm gonna go here with Kitty Gatewood, and I'm gonna remember top down. There we go, and then maybe we can fix that other one. That's going to come almost to the top there. I wish there was more contrast between this book spine and the bookshelf, but I also like the fact that it looks kind of authentic. I'm going to try to get them to have just a little bit. I don't mind. It needs to be flush at the bottom of the bookshelf, but I don't want it up to the top of the pocket. Not that it matters that much. Good heavens, I'm being a little peculiar about it. The Wise Men of Gotham. I didn't get that centered very nicely there. Again, I keep saying it doesn't matter, and then I go and fuss about it as though it matters. But I think something like this looks really intriguing, actually, you know, with these sort of faux books. Because, you know, you see those strips there with this text going upside down, and you know exactly what they're supposed to be. Yeah, top down. I got to double check each one. I don't know why that just never occurred to me before. Here's Sir Thomas More. I want a little variation, so I'm going to trim him down just a little bit. I want him just a little bit shorter than his next door neighbor on the bookshelf. And make certain I have enough room for both of these. Yeah, that will work. Maybe I'll look for like a little stamp of a little teacup, or it just seemed like there ought to be something in this open space here. But for now, I'm very happy to have this just tilting that way, because that adds a little more motion and helps you know exactly what we mean this to be. There we go. There's that. I'm going to set that. That's okay. That's okay. Let's get to fixing my disastrous one of Days Gone By. Let me see if, you know, I damaged this background, but I think I might be okay with it. You know, it kind of looks like old wallpaper that's a little bit ripped. It's going to be mostly covered up anyway, so I think I'm just going to come in and orient these the right way. Yeah, top down. This one was already top down. You can see that these are little strips off of branding pieces of scrapbook paper. Well, Anne, get that. I want that oriented so that October afternoon is really balancing on the edge there of this one. And let's come in with Woodland Park this way, top down. I'm having to check every single time. I don't know why my instinct is to put him the other way. But that's not right. I can't believe just a little bit of prying helped to free them from their inappropriate positioning. It just goes to show, you know, it's only paper. You know, you make a mistake, you can pry it up, you can paste things over it, you can toss it and just begin again. It feels kind of good to be correcting that mistake, though. Yeah, here we go. Top down, top down, top down, top down. I'm feeling much better about this. And there we go. Because these are a little bit thicker and I do want them. I probably used glue stick on the first pass through. I think they're going to be a little more permanently affixed with using art glitter glue. There we go. Well, we saved me from myself there with that mistake. That felt good. That felt good to do that. I feel like this needs something else. Maybe this little one can go here. Yeah, I like that. It needs just a little bit something else, and I think that's something that can go without a title. And that adds a little bit of color there, and I've got room for that. Yeah, it needs just a little more visual weight. There we go. Aren't these cute? I think those look super, super cute. And I think I'm going to get to work getting some more done on this book lover's journal. And I think what I'm going to need is a lot of tags and a lot of journal cards to go in there, because I've got a fair amount of pockets now. I will keep on working on this, but I thank you for joining me for making this little bookshelf pocket. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.